Assalamualaikum everyone. We are back again with our another live station on Global Entrepreneurship Week. We have our guest, Hannah. So Hannah will introduce herself with you guys. Hannah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I'm really glad to be able to chat with everybody today um, and talk about sustainability and entrepreneurship, a little bit about me. So you can understand my background. I got my master's in development studies from the University of Oxford. And while there, I was working on different initiatives and kind of helping companies find ways to be more sustainable. And now I am basically doing climate action research and um, trying to. I work for a company where we're trying to get people to understand that, climate action is something that we can do, something that we can accomplish if we really set our minds and our goals toward it. Um, and yeah, that's a little bit about me. But today we're here to talk about sustainability and entrepreneurship. So I wanted it to be a little bit interactive. I know it's later at night in Bangladesh right now. Um, so I'm going to give a little bit of an intro. I don't want to preach to a choir. If you're here, I know that you are curious enough to know and learn about sustainability. So I don't want to get too much into the weeds of things because I trust that everyone, it has an interest if you're here. But I wanted to make it fun since it is later at night. Okay, so first, what is sustainability? Well, we know that sustainability is making something last. So when you're maybe talking about doing a project, you want to make it sustainable, you want to make sure that it can potentially last after you're gone. Whatever your initiative is, it will be able to continue once your involvement in it stops. When we're talking about making sure that our actions are sustainable for the environment. It's so that the environment isn't harmed, the environment can continue to thrive while we are doing whatever it is that we're doing and long after that we're gone. Sustainability extends, though, as well to the social sphere. We have to make sure that, we're acting sustainably with one another and we aren't harming one another in each of the actions that we do. So, a great way to understand and get to know the different ways of sustainability and behaving sustainably is, as you may already know, the 17 sustainability development goals that were basically kind of co-created by the UN and its partners. So I wonder if I can send links into the chat just because I'd like if you could open up. Um, you could either use this link that I'm sharing, or I don't know actually if this is sharing right now, but you can look up online if you're online right now the 17 sustainable development goals and potentially pull those up. They may be useful in the next activity. But these 17 goals basically break down different ways that we can think about and consider sustainability. Of course, they have their own purposes in that they're goals that each country and each organization and firm should be working towards so that we can live in a more sustainable world. But they're also useful in considering how you operate sustainably as an entrepreneur, whether that's considering the first one, no poverty, or the last one, partnership for the goals, or anything in between. From this, now we can also start to think about corporate social responsibility and environment, social, and governance, or otherwise known as ESG, as you may hear or see a lot of, especially these days. So, corporate social responsibility is when it's basically how a firm governs itself and operates in the world. It's how it shows up in the world. ESG is then maybe how we're going to evaluate that. The sustainable development goals are something that you can try to use then to help you with that evaluation. It can give you things that, hey, actually, maybe they need to think about this thing that the SDGs talk about. when they're considering how they want to be responsible in their corporate social responsibility. Let's get into an activity. So for ESG now, remember this is how we evaluate how a company is going to be operating in the world, how it's going to be operating sustainably. I've kind of created 3 different case studies for us. The first, we're going to focus on environment. The next, we will focus on the social. The third, we'll focus on governance. When we're thinking, I'll start with environment. When we're thinking about evaluating how a company is going to show up in the world and interact with its environment, there's a million things we need to consider, right? I've listed 3 here of things that I've considered, but I want to hear from everybody, whether it's in the comments or even if you're thinking it to yourself, what other ways you feel the company could be showing up better in the world for the environment, or what you'd hope to learn if the company's considered it. We don't always want to put companies at the stake and say, you're not doing anything, you're not doing enough. It can get demoralizing. Imagine if that's something that you were hearing. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be a goal, right? That doesn't mean it shouldn't be something that people are trying to work towards. So I think this activity is going to help, if we can think of a company and see how we can evaluate it, we can use that as learning. And when you're going on then to do your own businesses, have these things in mind. So let's start with environment. I'm going to give you a scenario, and I'm going to ask if you could think of some of the ways that the company could continue to consider how it could show up better for the environment, or what things you think they aren't doing. And if you can go one step further and connect them to the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, that is bonus points. So this company makes clothes out of 100% recycled materials. They sell it in stores and online. The stores will accept your old clothes if you'd like, and they will then, recycle them and continue to create new products out of them. So all of its goods are 100% recyclable, and they are made out of 100% recyclable materials. That sounds fantastic, right? We love a company that is thinking of ways to reduce the amount of pollution and things that go into our environment. But this company is asking, how can we improve the ways that we show up for the environment? What are some things that we may not be considering when it comes to our impact on the environment? We think we're doing 100%, sustainably. We're reducing the output of our emissions and our pollutions by using these recycled materials. How can we do better? So if you would like to take a minute to skim through the SDGs, see which ways potentially they aren't showing up necessarily yet for the environment, or maybe they haven't explained to you they're showing up for the environment yet. I'll give you a moment to do that now. And then if you have anything on your mind that you'd like to put into the chat, I'd love to see what everyone's thinking. Okay. So if you're still thinking, that's fine. The brainstorming is fantastic. I'll give you some things that I came up with when I was thinking through this. One way that the way it's showing up in the environment is considering the carbon emissions from transporting its goods. It's fantastic that they're recycling. It's fantastic that they're making everything out of recycled goods. But how are you getting them to your stores? How are you getting them to your customers? Could you consider ways that will reduce the emissions that go into our air? And that connects to Sustainable Development Goal number 13, which is climate action. Right? Climate action, we talk a lot about reducing our emissions. And and maybe if you see something, if you're using the Sustainable Development Goals as reference, that'd be kind of flag like, what are they doing for climate action when it comes to carbon emissions? The next thing is they could consider their energy use in their store locations or in their offices. What kind of energy are they using to power those? Um, Again, considering emissions, and also considering Sustainable Development Goal number 7, which is about clean energy. The third one is something that I'm not entirely sure how many companies think about, but I've found it to be something that is not often considered, but is, do their recipients have the capacity to recycle? Because actually in a lot of places you can't recycle. Your town does not, have a recycling facility, so everything kind of goes in the same place. Do your recipients have the ability to recycle? And I thought that could relate to SDG number 9, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure. I thought that could relate to number 11, which is about sustainable cities and communities, and number 12, which is responsible consumption and production. So I think it's fantastic if a company is able to make recyclable goods, but if people don't have the ability to recycle them, then there's that gap there. It's up to the company. I mean, as a consultant, you could potentially, help find ways that a company would be able to fill these gaps. But for the sake of this exercise, we're just trying to think of ways that, give the company some food for thought. Okay, let's move on to the social. When we're talking about the social aspect of ESG, we're trying to think of the ways that the company shows up for the people that they interact with. Whether it's people that they hire, as well as the people that are affected by their operations in the community. If you have if you maybe have a local restaurant in the community, maybe they put on food drives, maybe they put on events for the kids in the town. That's how they're that's how they're interacting with their social environment. So I'm going to give another example of a company. A textiles company chooses to operate in a lower income area. They hire locally. They'll have food drives for the local community, and they'll facilitate the building of schools in the local community. So really, involved with the community, wanting to make sure it's operating, with everyone who is there. So what are some ways that the company could consider showing up better, or maybe that we'd love to know how the company is showing up for the community that it's operating in? So I'll give you another minute to scroll through the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, think through different ways that the company could be showing up for the people they work with better, or hopefully they are. Also, I'm getting some notifications that I have a limited bandwidth, so if at any moment you can't hear me or see me, you could just let me know.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. Can you see me?
I can't see you. It's
Okay,
black.
okay, great. I can see that's why. Okay. Okay, we got a comment actually. Should we take that right now?
Yeah, we can take that while we wait. Yeah.
Okay. We got a comment like discuss the importance of a stakeholder engagement and collaboration in driving sustainable entrepreneurship.
Sure. So I've found, well, I'll start by saying this. When it comes to discussing sustainability and when we're going through these questions, of course, mine is one perspective, and it can change day to day as our environment our geopolitical environment, everything changes on a day-to-day basis. So take what I say now with a grain of salt. Understand it's coming from one perspective, and I also encourage everybody to go and do their own research. Um, Something that I say, as having kind of consulted and advised on sustainability, would be different from what one of even my friends would say is important to consider, just because we have different perspectives as to what should be addressed right now, and neither is more important than the other, but it's just good to get these different perspectives. So the the importance of stakeholder engagement and collaboration has to do kind of with that as well. You're having people with different interests, um, different backgrounds and experiences, so therefore informing what they believe is important, coming together to address issues or even get out in front of them before they can happen, and make sure that their business operations are sustainable for the business itself, so that your business can, or the effects of it, especially if they're beneficial to the people that you serve, your customers, will continue to benefit them once you're gone, whether you move on to a different thing or whatever, or you decide to pivot your efforts, as well as sustainable for the recipients, for the community you're operating in, and for the environment. So, as a business or as an entrepreneur, I would suggest that you engage with your customers, engage with those that you're working with to deliver your product to customers, and sit down and have an honest conversation about the issues that will arise with your engagement, and how you can address them. And the reason it's important to engage with the different people is because they will think of something that you have not thought of, because it will affect them in a way that potentially would not have affected you. Um, so I think that is, I would say, is one of the most important things about the stakeholder engagement and collaboration for sustainable entrepreneurship. Um, yes, it's also important as you're operating, and as I mentioned before, with environments, whether the ones growing outside or the geopolitical environment changing day to day, that you maintain an open line of communication and feedback between you and your stakeholders either being your customers or those that you're working with, so that you can understand how these changes are happening day to day, minute to minute. That'll be sustainable for you as an entrepreneur, because you'll be able to respond to these changes and help your customers and stakeholders better. And it will be sustainable for them and for the environment. So I hope that answers the question. And please send a follow up if there's anything else, that you'd like me to add. So hopefully that was enough time to think of some ways that this company that I created for our second case study could show up for the people they work with and around and for. The first consideration I'd ask the company about is, are they considering the political context that they are operating in? That could relate to SDG number 10, reduced inequalities. Are they considering the ways that the people they are operating with and for and around in the community that they're placed in, what is going on there with the people, and how they're interacting with businesses, how they've historically interacted with businesses, why that is the case. Is it a situation where a company has come in before and kind of used the community to a place that in a way that wasn't sustainable, and has now made the community the way it is? and how can you make sure that that doesn't happen again? How can you make sure that actually the opposite happens and that the community around you can benefit? Um, I would also consider SDG number one, no poverty. Um, how much are the local employees getting paid? Sometimes companies will go into places of lower income, or maybe that haven't been treated responsibly and equitably by the political environment that they're operating in, and take advantage of that. So, ensuring that the people that you're working with, you're doing so in a responsible way and a fair and equitable way, is something that the company is going to need to consider, because it's great that they're putting on the schools for the children and having these different things. But again, you want it to be sustainable, because those day-to-day activities, once the company leaves, um, it will be done. But how are they going to contribute to the people's everyday lives in a way that the people can continue to thrive long after the company leaves? This next one I thought was number 6, clean water and sanitation. A textiles company, almost, I mean, so many businesses will affect, especially the water around them. So, are they operating in the environment in a way that is still allowing the environment to be suitable for people to live in? Are they making sure that they're not polluting the water? Are they making sure that they're not polluting the air? Because that is going to affect the people who live in the community, whether they choose to be involved with the business or not. I guess I'll pause and see if there's any questions before I move on to the final case study.
There is, okay, let me check. No, there is no new comments actually. Okay, as you were talking about that companies, they should focus on their stakeholders, but there is a thing. We always see that when companies, we talk about CSR, or there's a stakeholders, their clean, those SDG goals you were working, like climate actions or clean waters. So actually, at least in Bangladesh, the management is not that concerned. They don't focus on that, right? Uh, However ways we try to uh, create awareness, however ways we try to make them understand how important this is for us, for their people, but they just don't want to consider that. They think that if they invest on that or they work on that, their profit will go down, right? So how to deal with that actually?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I would say, after this initial think about it, it would require an approach and interventions at all different levels. Because, as we know, setting one policy at the governmental level will not necessarily change day to day operations, right? And as we know, sometimes even business to business, businesses trying to pressure other businesses into doing something won't be enough. And working at the grassroots level, people deciding, like, hey, we don't accept this anymore. This isn't allowed. We're not okay with this. Voicing that and acting on that is, again, only one part of the equation. If perhaps the other two levels aren't trying to fulfill their responsible, obligations and duties, and in really fighting for that sustainable change. So I think it would require kind of all different levels and all different methods of intervention, to basically get that company to operate in a way that is sustainable. And I think that's what we're wrestling with now, trying to get companies on board to help, ensure that we don't get past the 1.5 um, degree
Yes,
Celsius
I
world by
got
2035.
exactly. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, can you give us some successful examples of businesses that have effectively integrated sustainability into their core practices?
So I I feel like I could name probably more companies that are trying to integrate sustainability into their core practices than those who aren't. Um, that I know of, because sometimes who you choose to be around you and what you choose to interact with is going to inform your perspective and whatnot. But I would say, because I don't necessarily just want to kind of flag these these companies on the stream just yet, because there's going to be kind of I'm not sure what the consequence would be of that. But with each company, I would say, and I'm sure you can all think of a few, whether it's distributors of different products that you buy online, or different travel companies, or different clothes that we buy. Look online and see how they're deciding to show up in the world. And then you can again use these exercises that we've been doing to see, like, but have they considered this thing, which actually I feel is pretty obvious for them to be considering. Yes, they're allowing, they're making their clothes out of recycled goods, which could be the case for a lot of the clothes that we wear and that we may buy online or go in store and buy. But is it sustainable for the people who are working there? Is it sustainable the for the environment when it gets to the end of its life? Um, or potentially, again, you'll see sometimes maybe travel companies saying, yes, we're making sure that we are local, we're working with people in the local environment, we're having empowerment programs. And I think we could name these same companies because they are some of the biggest companies that are out there. But maybe they're not considering their carbon emissions when it comes to transporting people back and forth from these travel destinations, or potentially they're not considering the buildings that they're operating in, and how sustainable they are. And this is it's I applaud them though for making an effort. We have to simultaneously celebrate progress towards climate action, while also understanding and maintaining responsibility for needing to do more. Like, amazing, yes, use that accomplishment as fuel and inspiration and motivation for continuing to move forward, right? So when it comes to which companies do that, I think a lot of companies these days will do that. Um, but seeing online, investigating their operations and seeing if they really align with yours in terms of what you believe is important is how I would go about that.
Uh,
Um,
what how sustainable entrepreneurs actually measure their success, like when how they measure the impact of their initiatives?
sure. So for that, I would recommend looking into developing a monitoring, evaluation, and learnings framework, and basically a method of evaluation. So you can learn how to do this, whether it's online. Part of that will be your stakeholder engagement, trying to get input from everybody around you, from people who you wouldn't even necessarily usually have around you, to get that other perspective. That the circle that you surround yourself with is going to have one perspective by nature of your own selection bias. So being like, you know what, I actually wouldn't usually talk to these people as well, let me see what they think. Get all of these different opinions and experiences, and develop a method of monitoring your impact. This is going to be different for every company. Um, Again, you can find one that suits you online, but you might want to make sure that you have ways of taking in qualitative information, that customer experience, that the experiences that can only be said in words, right? Nothing that can be put into numbers. And then you'll also have that quantifiable one, right? The quantifiable ones, you could say, to some extent, I can quantify how much emissions I'm putting out into the world because I know that I'm driving the products with maybe a fuel powered car back and forth this many, this distance in this many days, etc. And then of course you'll have again that qualitative one where it's like, this is how people feel about it. I can't put that into a number. You'll evaluate it. You'll come up with the people around you and the people not usually around you with a way of saying, if I hit this threshold, I did a good job. Or if I get under this threshold, I need to do better. If I get over the threshold, maybe of say emissions that I'm okay, comfortable with, and I believe it's sustainable, and that the people around me believe it's sustainable, then that's, then I need to be doing better. Whatever the case is, you'll have that method of evaluating before you start. And the learnings part is going to be continuously informing and affecting the monitoring and the evaluating part. The learnings are when you take that input and the evaluation of it and you say, okay, you know what, I see that I could be doing this better, like we need to rethink this. Or perhaps you see, actually I really surpassed my goal in this one by miles, like am I either maybe monitoring something incorrectly, or maybe I need to be setting a more rigorous target for myself, or something else. You can decide that. But that's where maintaining that continuous communication and feedback channel comes in, right? Because it's all fine and dandy to say, yes, this is how I'm going to monitor everything. Yes, this is how I'll evaluate everything. Okay, I learned from it. But if you don't go back into the community then, and you don't go back to your stakeholders for the learning part as well, then you're going to continue to operate like everything is fine and dandy. Maybe while the situation though around you is changing. And once that happens and you are blind to that, you're going to be operating unsustainably, which may be going against everything you're trying to do. Perhaps while we have a little bit of time left, we'll just go over the governance aspect of the ESG. And I think that'll help maybe answer any upcoming questions when it comes to kind of ensuring that your business is operating in a way that lives up to sustainability and environmental, social, and governance. As we hope to do so. So this example, we're going to say a construction firm hires hires people of all genders, and everything is equal, right? 50% male, 50% female, everything is equal in terms of who they hire and their identities and their race and their background and religion. Everything is equal in terms of the amount of people they hire from each background, right? They pay everybody equally. Everyone gets the same amount of pay. And all of the employees get the same benefits. You get the same holidays off. You get you get the same amount of days off. You get the same weekends. You get the same everything, okay? Everything is equal. So what are some ways then that the company asks, how can I be showing up for the people that we govern better? The people that we govern being basically being, the people that they hire, the people that work with them, the people that work for them, those stakeholders that are helping deliver the product. So I'll give a minute to think those through, and also think through any other questions in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. um, Hannah, as you were talking about that employees and other people working with us, right? So, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. As you were talking about that, there I have a question here. Like, when you make decisions for your employees and um, other people, there are sometimes come some ethical issues, right? Ethical considerations regarding what would be sustainable or not, or for that community I am working, that locality, if that would fit in or not, how we can work on there.
Sure. Um, I I don't want to be too repetitive, but it's the truth. I It comes down to listening to those around you, especially the people that you're affecting. Um, and if I mean, as we know, some companies do not care. You know, hopefully, if
This
you're
is
on this,
something that we don't do actually.
yeah,
We don't
yeah,
want to.
yeah. So for those companies that don't want to, um, that is when those multiple levels of intervention are gonna have to come in, and I think so. There are case studies of this. I did a course online, ethical decision making for global managers, and um, one of those was about companies operating in apartheid South Africa. You know, the pressure that the international community put on one of the companies discussed in the case study was great enough that the company had to cease its operations there because it was just that grassroots voicing of opinions put on by the international community was strong enough to force them out, and that kind of helped push the policy in that direction as well, of the governmental policy. So these things are interconnected. um, when it comes to how they operate for their own employees and addressing that, and they don't want to, I think that explains then why we see strikes, right? And we see workers coming together and they're deciding that the consequences of the strike um, are not greater than the consequences of staying there. And it's unfortunate that it has to get to that point of it. And I'd hope that companies would act sooner than that. But I think that would explain that. Yeah, I'm really thinking on that question. Yeah, if I have more to add later, then I'll do that. But
Okay. This goal, that sustainable responsibility, sustainable entrepreneurs, uh, they have to actually maintain their commitment, right, to
yeah,
that responsibility when they plan to do it. It's a commitment. So to be committed to their responsibilities, and also maintaining their growth, how to address those challenges, or how they can actually plan their strategies to do the growth, also to be committed to their responsibilities.
yeah. So I think the business operations that we're accustomed to seeing, and I think the difficulty that the world has had in getting businesses to, until now, and even still now, getting on board with the climate action and stuff, has created a sentiment of it being like feeling burdensome to be acting sustainably. We increasingly see that changing, though. Um, and it's becoming more and more the case now, where if a customer could choose between two of the exact same products, the alternative one being though that it operates sustainably, a person will choose to do that more often than not. How you're able to get in front of the competition and how you're able to ensure that you are maintaining your commitment and growing at the same time is, as I mentioned before, that monitoring, evaluation, and learnings, MEL framework that I mentioned before. When you are actively going into the community, whether it's of your business to business peer stakeholders or your end recipients, not many companies do that to an extent where they can necessarily get ahead of the rest, right, and really grow and expand. Increasingly they are starting to do so, but it's still not necessarily the norm. So I would say, so that you can have that growth, make sure that you're listening and responding to people's needs. It is the kind of stagnation in responding to what people have been calling for decades that is what landed us in this situation now, where we have 7 more years to fight this climate change. And now companies are scrambling. Oh, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Right. So if you're getting into your entrepreneurship and starting your business,
Mm-hmm.
get ahead of, listen to the people, listen to what they're saying. People have been, they're already thinking it, they're already saying it. Let it be of benefit to you and ultimately then to them when you take that feedback back and you operate sustainably in your community.
So this is great that we can make sure our growth by monitoring, evaluating, and learning. Also, we can do our commitment through listening, responding to people, right? But I here is something that I want to talk about, that those entrepreneurs has to look for investors, right? They have to impress those investors to get their to expand their businesses. So when they are planning this sustainability entrepreneurship, how to design that business model to get those investments, to make sure that we are doing good to people, good to environment, also we are actually making a profitable business here.
Sure. So increase, and this is anecdotal experience, um, which is again why I am continuously kind of imploring everyone to do research for what is going to be most relevant to the kind of business and where it's going to be operating and whatnot that they're going to be doing. But it has increasingly become the case where investors want to see that you have, environmental, social, and governance mechanisms in place. You're operating sustainably. And, we hear about DEI a lot, diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they want to see that you have that considered and starting to be, put into place in your business. So increasingly investors are looking for that. Now, again, how do you balance that, especially before you necessarily have gotten started, with showing that you're gonna have growth? I think that is then going to be what you need to consider when you're building what purpose your business serves. If it's a need in the community, and not only would the community appreciate the need being met, but actually the company going above and beyond and now benefiting their lives, that is going to be a company that they choose before they choose a different one that offers that same end product but doesn't go that extra step. So I think demonstrating that will help kind of set you apart from the rest, because it's genuinely not like something that that many companies think about. Um, when you're going to be looking for these investors as well, see where their interests are. You have to make sure that the people that you are comfortable with the interests of the investors, right? Because if the investor, it does not care, if the investor is, has none of your same morals, then you also have to equally be considering the operations of the investor, and make sure that those aligned. Um, are there any follow-up questions, or should we perhaps, before the end, go through the last case study?
No, there is no follow-up question right now. Actually, you can go through your topics. Thank
Sure.
you so
So
much
this
for
is,
your answers, actually.
yeah, you're welcome. I hope they're helpful. I feel like sometimes they can be a bit vague, but that's because they everybody's company will be different, but I hope that it kind of points towards things that you could look into, like the monitoring and evaluation and um, the different things like that. So,
Yes, you were really
okay,
pretty
so
clear. Thank you so much for that.
I'm
Okay.
I'm glad. So just to refresh everyone's memory, the case study that we were discussing was one on a construction firm that hires everybody equally, everyone equally gets paid, everyone gets equal holidays and time off, and everything is equal. So what could they possibly do better? Or what, might they be doing, but we are just have an interest in? We don't want to assume the negative, but we can ask questions. I thought, how are they interacting with SDG number 8, decent work and economic growth? Is are people getting paid for their work sufficiently? It's great that everyone's getting paid equally and you don't have any discrimination in pay. Um, but are they getting paid fairly for the work that they're doing, or all they are getting, are they all barely making anything? Um, the next one is good health, sustainable development goal number 3, good health and well-being. Are the employees working in an environment, that is safe on the construction site? Are they at risk? Are those risks mitigated? Are they aware of all of the risks that come with working there? Are they safe and healthy there? And the third one that I thought of, which ties into both of them, have to do with, let's say, SDG number 5, which is gender equality, and SDG number 10, which is reduce inequalities. Everything can be equal, but is it fair? Are people treated fairly? If you have, are women forced to wear men's uniforms that don't fit them, and therefore it's dangerous on this site, right? It's great if you think, hey, I'm doing everything equal, so that's fine. But actually, you need to listen, right? You need to listen to what the people are
Yes.
telling you. You need to ask people, how is this? What do you think of this? How can I improve this? And make that consideration that actually doing everything equal will not actually address everybody's needs. Um, so I appreciate that if a company thinks that that's the right way to go about something, but definitely need to make sure that things are more equitable and addressing people's needs than equal, and being the same, only addressing some people's needs and leaving out others. So yeah, any questions on that, or any other questions in the next couple of minutes, I'd be happy to answer. And also
Okay.
feedback for how this has gone. I'd love to hear, because this is the first time I'm doing something like this. So I'd love to hear people's thoughts.
Okay. Thank you so much. I have actually, I want to ask you. I believe you were really excited about COP 28, right? 2023.
Yes,
So what's your plan regarding that? Can you share with us?
sure. So I'm basically going with my group, um, and I've just published on my LinkedIn an insights pack that we've
Mm,
co-created with our partners. And basically, as how I mentioned before, the progress that we're making as a world towards a healthier planet and a more sustainable way of living and everything, to use that as inspiration and motivation and a platform to say that we can do it, right? So this pack that I've just put up on my LinkedIn, that made in collaboration with my team and our partners, is basically the some fuel for that. It's basically some things that you can read and be like, okay, this is really great news to hear that we are, exceeding the pace that we anticipated we could when it comes to developing this sector or that form of energy. Um, and so basically, when people are at COP or sitting at home with their family and friends, whatever the case is, they can say, guys, wait, don't say, oh, this is. I mean, it is going to be difficult, but don't say it's not possible, because look at all of this information. We have been doing it. We can do it. We can do it, right? So this provides resources for people to be able to take that data and use it for that purpose. It also provides insights on different ways that coalitions have been coming together, of leaders in different regions, leaders in different kind of sectors have been coming together and saying, we stand with our governments, we stand with our leaders, we stand with our decision makers and the people in getting these climate action transformations done, right? We support this. So let's do it, and also we have insights on how to communicate this, right? Like, how do we communicate the progress that we're making in a way that people will be receptive to? Like, if I start using all these different calculations and very specific terms that, it, people might tune out if they aren't already in that climate space. So how do we just communicate this simply, right? We always learn when we're writing our things in school or in jobs and stuff. The simpler you can write it, the better, right? So how can we just communicate all of this information to the point, simply, directly, and get people to understand it and really internalize it? So that's something that I've been working on the run up to COP, and uh, just a bunch of things to
you
do
seem really
now
excited,
then.
really excited.
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to being involved in a moment. Every minute of every day is a moment for change, but really when everyone's taking the time to really put their minds and dedicate their minds and time to it, at that specific time. And I think it can be really powerful, and I'm looking forward to being involved.
Great. If you don't mind, this is my personal curiosity actually. Can you
Mm.
share? I believe I was going through your LinkedIn, and I believe I found out that you were really an active student. You did health prize and all. You were postgraduate consultants, so you were really active. So how? What make you interested working with SDG goals? What made you
Sure.
work for them?
So I think the nature of the degree, the development studies degree, a lot of it had to do with, or a lot of it related, I should say, to addressing these sustainable development goals. Um, and as I saw opportunities to see how I could put what I was observing around me or in my conversations with people, or maybe what I knew about what is going on in the world, with what I was learning, and see, like, how are people putting this into action, right? Like, how are my
Yes.
peers at school putting this into action? Um, and honestly, I feel I've heard the saying before. It's something like the 5 or 6 people you surround yourself are who you are, right? So I
Mm,
would try and surround myself with people who were doing a lot. Almost all of the things I did in school were like I knew of someone, or I had a friend who had also done it or was also already doing it or wanted to do it in the future. Like they had that drive, right? And so I was
mm.
learning from them, um, the different opportunities that were available. I also had that drive, and I was able to bring them into things and say, "Hey guys, come join this, student after school thing with me. Come join this thing with me." But they were able to do the same. And so I think that's how I was able to get a pretty large array of extracurriculars, because I wanted to surround myself with people who also wanted to help the people around them and help the planet and help, further these sustainable development goals.
That's really great. Thank you so much. We're currently end of the session actually, so we can wrap it up. We're gonna wrap it up.
Sure.
That was really nice and informative session with you. I am looking forward to have more communication with you and all. Another session maybe we can work on. Thank you
Sure.
so much for your time.
Thank you. I really hope it was useful, and I thank you so much for inviting me. I know it's late, so I don't want to keep you guys too long, but I really, really appreciate it. So thanks everyone for coming and listening and chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. If I get any other questions from audience, I'll mail to you or get your response. Okay?
Amazing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Have a great day, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone. Um, we will meet again with another session. Till then, take care, everyone.